All right. So we'll restart again. Welcome to the Geek group once again. And we'll read our disclaimer. So let's see here. Topics, properties, and investments discussed are for educational purposes only. We do not sell securities. Each investor is responsible for their own decisions and must evaluate investments according to their investment risk tolerances. Opinions expressed are those of speakers and no one else. And then I'm going to read an intro to our guest speaker, Chalmette, and let's see if I can get this right. So this is the text you sent me, right, Chalmette?
Yeah, because I forgot I owe some information to the Anthro Bank, and I broke a promise because I was supposed to have that to you last week. So I sent you what I have on Clubhouse.
Nice. Okay, so here you go, guys. Here's the introduction of Chalmette. Chalmette is a real estate investor in multifamily properties. She is a native Houstonian that you will never forget once you have a conversation with her. She is a King's kid, which says ... Christ rules. And then she says she's a scientist by trade, turned in her lab coat and got suited up and pumped up for real estate several years ago. She's an investor and a commercial real estate agent with a special interest in multifamily investing. She's currently an LP on one deal in the Houston area. She's actively looking for her first deal to participate in as a GP or co-GP. She's looking to partner up to collaborate with other investors and people from all over the world who share similar interests and practices. She's an avid world traveler and connoisseur of anything that is defined as luxury fit for humans, and is a lover of languages. She has a proud podcast. She's the proud podcast host of International Real Estate Advisors with C. Ray. She's based out of Houston, Texas. And with that, thank you very much. I want to introduce to you, I call her C. Ray, right? So Chalmette Ray, go ahead. Take it away and let me know what we run into as we go through the call.
So never presented on this platform. So do I push present now?
Yep. So click present now.
And
it will give you an option. It'll say, do you want to share your entire screen? And click on entire screen.
Okay.
And then down at the right, I think it says share after that.
Okay. Okay, can you see something?
Yes.
Okay, so then I just open up the file. Is that?
Yep. So navigate to your file.
Okay, so you see it. Do you see my screen, my PowerPoint? Okay, this is looking kind of weird. Y'all aren't saying anything.
Yeah, there we go. Now? Yeah, you just, when you drag it over like that, I see it now, yes.
Okay, so I guess I'll be looking at the screen, but I won't be able to see you all. Is that right?
Yeah, and sometimes you can adjust the format. Let me see where that is. You can adjust the format so that you can see people and your screen at the same time. But it depends.
Well, that's okay, because then if you all are giving side eyes, I don't really want to see it. So it's okay. I need to see that, So it's all good. Okay.
Right.
Okay, so I can start.
Take it away.
Okay. So why start a podcast? Would it be for business and branding or personal or hobby? And just a little disclaimer here. Everything that I share is just coming from my perspective, but there is obviously more than one way to skin a cat. No harm intended for those PETA lovers. But everyone will have their own choice about how they go about starting and why. A little about why I started. So my husband and I enjoy traveling all over the world, and I would like to at some point have the opportunity to live abroad and just kind of experience life longer than just 2 or 3 weeks vacations at a time, 2 or 3 week vacation slots, so to speak, throughout the year. So I began probably a good 4 years ago, looking into what it would require of a person to purchase in this case, France is what I began kind of looking into. And it comes with, quite a few moving parts. And then in 2020, with I guess the shutdown or what have you, and I spent a lot of time, kind of building up that LinkedIn family. And a lot of people starting podcasts and, many people doing it for branding and just, whether they were starting it for hobby, whatever. And I thought, why not start a podcast to talk about international real estate investments? And I was like, okay. So I spoke with a few people that already had a podcast and just kind of got their 2 cents about what they thought regarding it. And I decided to just kind of, go ahead and take the first step and, move toward doing that. So that's a little background as to why I, started. And currently, for me, it's more of a hobby, but it's moving into, I guess, somewhat of a possible business and branding, because there are just kind of different ways you can do things. You can kind of create avenues to, I guess, essentially link it with your investing and your business of choice. I should say, whatever it is that you're doing, and you can link kind of the podcast along with that. So then one of the next questions was, who will run the shop? Like, will I be doing it by myself, or will I, require a team? And so I just decided to keep costs low. Let me just, branch out on my own and just do it by myself. And when and if I get to the point where I feel like I'm just unable to do those things by myself, then I'll bring in some people. But right now, I'm doing everything by myself. So wearing multiple hats. But a lot of the podcasts, they do have like teams of, virtual assistants and people that'll do marketing, people that'll be the ones, setting up doing the editing, the people that'll be doing the artwork for like your cover art and just any small component of the show at large. These larger groups, and then people that just really like to kind of have that in place. They don't have time. They have a team of people. So then the question was, what is my CapEx budget? Because they have, I guess minimum equipment overall, but it's still pertinent. So one thing was a microphone, and that's pretty much like a must. You need to have a microphone. A popper. Usually you don't want to be speaking into your mic and it's, making that, I guess, the retort noise or whatever, where it's kind of hitting people's ears. You need usually a computer of some sort. Not saying you can't do it on your Droid or your iPhone, but most of the time you're probably going to want to do it on a computer just to kind of get, I don't know, most of it just kind of ironed out in a way that is conducive to just a show that sounds professional and that people will enjoy listening to. Because what I realized very early on is podcasts are a lot like the radio. If you listen to the radio and the music is kind of ebbing and flowing and it doesn't sound good, people usually go to the next station or they turn it off. Podcasts are very similar in that way. Monitors, that's kind of a personal thing. I like to have like 2 or 3 monitors, but that's not everybody, but some people. Artwork, you generally are going to want to have cover art. So that's going to be, whatever your podcast is, I don't know, tells a little bit about the theme. It'll usually kind of say a little about the creator, whoever that podcast host is, and a camera, because you're going to want to probably, if at all possible, have the recording of the video. And whether or not you use it right now, that's up to you. You call the shot on it. But it's a good way to have additional content for releasing at a later date, if not upon it being edited and you're releasing the podcast episode anyway. So that's like part of your CapEx, big part of your CapEx budget. And your OpEx budget, that's another question you want to ask yourself, because these are things that, there will be considered reoccurring costs. And so for me, I then began looking for editing software, and I wanted to choose something that was free. And I chose Audacity. There are, GarageBand, Adobe Audition. There's a number of others, but these are good examples of free ones. And Audacity is really, it's really good. It's pretty intuitive once you know how to use it. And I located a number of YouTube videos, and I used that to learn how to use it, because it wasn't necessarily that intuitive just reading the manual, whatever they call it. But I went online and just looked up YouTube videos for like any and everything that I had a question about at the time. They also have paid editing, and a good example of that is Podetize. I haven't enlisted their services, but I have an acquaintance, friend, what have you, that uses them and speaks very highly of them. And then there's some other people that I saw on their website that I know, and they use them as well. The promoting of your podcast, you have places like Invested Talent. Ruben Kanya is the owner, CEO, what have you, of that. And so it's a lot of, he uses the repurposing kind of system to continue to get your name and get the word out there about your podcast. And there are a number of companies that will promote your podcast, whether it be doing downloads, get you this many downloads or whatever. There's no shortage of them. It comes with the cost, and the cost will vary based on who they are, what it is that you need done, and I guess how long you'll be doing that, whatever services you will be hiring them for. Or you could just do the promoting yourself. That's not unusual, because a lot of the social media, you want to make sure that you don't, in my opinion, just totally let it go, because you want to make sure that there's that human piece where people know it's not just electronically generated and you're not at all engaging with them, and they start feeling like it's some robot on the other side. The hosting website, essentially, Buzzsprout is pretty popular and it is pretty inexpensive. That's probably why it is so popular. But there are other hosting websites. And then for those that have a business website, you will also have more than likely a page where you will, be able to also kind of have an insert about your podcast. And like I said, tie that into your business overall. The artwork, I enlisted somebody from Fiverr for my cover art. And then I took that and I just kind of edited it to, something of my liking as far as per episode. So I usually input the picture of whomever the guest is. And so I use Canva to do that. And it depends on what you're using or how much of the Canva you're using as far as the features are concerned, as to whether or not it will make sense to purchase a subscription for Canva. The recording tool or software, that varies too. I tend to use Zoom, and that's because my episodes involve more than likely one person. So I can go for essentially however long it sounds with Zoom. If you have more than one person that you're interviewing on a podcast and you use Zoom, you get a 40-minute cutoff. And I think they give you one grace, time where they will, if you go over, they'll give you that for free, but then it's not something that you can count on. So if you have a podcast and say you bring on a co-host, you're going to want to look into the subscription of what Zoom will cost you. Microsoft Teams has one that I've used too whenever I do bring in multiple guests for those rare times. And I think it's like $5 or $6. It's something like that a month that I would have to pay to continue that, where I would have the ability to bring in multiple guests. So that's, that's still your shot to call how you want to organize it. finding guests and interviewing them to see if they would be a good fit for your podcast. That's also another job if you choose to go after it alone. Because for me, I found a lot of people on LinkedIn I've reached out to. I've also found people like whenever I am reading different articles about different investment opportunities, like I have someone coming on next week, and I found him on an article I read for the decanter.com. And so he's a wine vineyard broker, essentially, in Bordeaux, France. So, and I just reached out to him because I read the article that they wrote about him and some of the literature that he had provided there in his interview. And I reached out to him and called him. And well, no, I reached out to him, emailed him. Then we decided to have a WhatsApp call and hopped on a call and just talked about what I was doing and kind of what he was doing. And he agreed that he would love to come on. And so I was like, okay. So I draft up a number of what I call agenda or talking points, essentially. And that is edited and kind of tailored to whomever that guest is, as far as like what we're talking about. There's some general questions, but then the more not intimate, but the more detailed questions will be based on what it is, the role that they're playing in the, I guess, real estate transaction overall. Because when I say advisor, real estate advisor, I'm talking about anybody who plays a role in helping that, that purchase take place, that sale takes place, that reposition, that development, whatever it is. Because from, country to country, essentially, state to state, sometimes it can be quite different. And so that's part of what I like to provide in just my show, is that these different perspectives, and so that people know kind of what would be required of them if they chose to venture into a particular market. So that's something some people like to outsource, as far as finding guests and interviewing them to see if they'd be a good fit. But I'm running it on my own. Where you get them from, like I said, be LinkedIn, Clubhouse, Facebook, or Meta, whatever it's called, and Instagram. Just depends. But that's kind of the route I've chose so far. Then the podcast style. So that's kind of up to you as well. Like, if you want to have a podcast kind of like the upper crust, go for it. Mine is casual and conversational. I mean, if you want to have a bottle of wine while we're on the call, good. Cup of tea, some nice clean water, whatever you want to do. And I've seen some podcasts, they're just kind of just good and hood. It's like, but it's just whatever it is that you're talking about. What do you feel like, you want to offer to your audience or what have you? You get a chance to just kind of decide how you want that to flow, and you should just, in my opinion, do what is comfortable, because it comes out in the show, and people, that's what they essentially want to see, and that'll just kind of organically cultivate your audience as to whether or not they want to follow you in that capacity. Also, show notes, like that still kind of goes back to your style. Like I don't do show notes. I mean, I probably will start at some point, but right now, with all that's involved, I do good to do the editing and the releasing and all of that. So the show notes, I'm like, nah, that's okay. But some people will do like show notes, and it'll be down to the second and this minute. We talked about this to this minute and that, and it's cute. So hey, if you need to do it, do it. But I just generally have people send me a bio that they want to make available to those that are listening, and that they're comfortable with sharing that. And we get it from that direction, and then I just post that and make sure that it's there. And when people listen to the episode, they can, see those details about that particular, person or what have you. The release times and dates, I've seen people do, I don't know, a release every day. Like some people, they release a podcast episode every day. Other people, it might be once a week. So the frequency, it's all up to you. And I guess, how often you release will have a crucial impact on how many interviews, like, how much do you have to do as far as work involved regarding this podcast. So I release once a week on average. And I mean, that is something to be keeping up with already. But the more you do it, the better you become at kind of organized, and it's just kind of the flow of your podcast. So then I find it's less to edit, which is cool, because I mean, there's little to nothing for me to do now. But when I first started last year, no, I'm sorry, I started at the very end of 2020 actually, but I kept kind of losing confidence, and so I didn't really start publishing anything until like summer, or I don't know, late spring of I think it was spring of last year. So that's, like I said, that's up to you, the release dates and how often. It's definitely up to you. A lot of times people do seasons, so they might have 12 or however many podcast episodes within a season, and then they might, pause that and take off for about a month or two and build up your momentum again with your interviews, and then they come back for season 3. That's not unusual. A lot of times I hear experts say many people don't make it past like 20 episodes, and they probably have already just stopped. So, I mean, it seems to be momentous to get to 20 plus episodes, which seems pretty easy, but that's what I hear a lot of experts say. Like, that's already kind of something to be said about you if you're able to get to that point. So then it's about monetizing, to monetize or not. I'm not at the point where I'm monetizing at this stage, but it's something that I'm looking into, because it's definitely to be considered as to what is your end game for your pod baby. Do you want to, move toward making more money with the podcast, or making any money or whatever? And then if so, you consider, how do you go about getting sponsors? And that's kind of like a whole nother beast, or just a whole nother entity or a section on its own. And they have a lot of people that are very knowledgeable about how to, I guess, coach you or direct you into how to go about getting sponsors, where these people kind of hang out and what they do and whatever. It's also a good reason to eventually start a YouTube channel, which is what I plan to do later this year, because that will help you kind of get that exposure, and people will start kind of noticing you, and then you'll kind of get those offerings, as well as you can kind of be out, kind of, I'm not going to say hunting, but just kind of out there hustling to some extent for them as well. But it's definitely up to you. So then the secret sauce, according to what I was told by Kevin Chimblin, he's one of the podcast experts, and he said, and as well as others, he said to find a group or audience that encompasses your listeners, and you engage them daily. He said at the water hole, or where you think they hang out, whether that be Instagram or whether that's some type of Facebook group, wherever they kind of, you see that they hang out, they spend some time there, they engage. And he said, go, and he said, engage at that place for 15 to 30 minutes a day. And he said, think about meaningful comments about whatever maybe they're posting about, and give, meaningful commentary or thoughts about it. But he was like, stay away from the emojis, because the emojis, I guess, kind of give the impression that, you really not half paying attention, but you kind of a little bit. But that was his advice. And he was saying how you want to start with, even if it's just, I don't know, a subset or a small group of a larger, that's okay. Don't necessarily think of it as you have to go and blanket this large audience, because it'll be that small one that it's almost like fire. It'll just catch on, and they'll start talking to their friends and mentioning it and what have you. And then before you know it, it'll kind of grow past this initial small group that you were kind of going after. And so that was kind of his advice as to how to approach growing your audience, and also just kind of employing that organic growth, because they have all kind of theories as to people, I don't know, hacking stuff and getting all these downloads, but they don't really mean anything. And then he also mentioned, I've heard it mentioned by many others, you want to have a list, they said like 100 or so, of your dream guest. And so these are people that you would, I guess, think of as experts in this particular, your niche of what your podcast is talking about, and that you want to interview them and just kind of talk to them on your podcast, so that I guess it kind of shows relevancy and, I don't know, street cred, for lack of a better word, I believe. And so that's something that was mentioned as well, that you would want to, I guess, consider whenever you're really thinking about growing your podcast and it becoming of importance to others, or that, in addition to yourself. That was fast. Sorry, it's way short, but that's all I have. Any questions?
Charmaine, this
Yes.
is Tarina. I have a question. Now,
Okay.
I've been a guest on podcasts, and when I first published my book, I made it a point to get on a couple of podcasts, and one of my strategies was to do several podcasts or be a guest on several podcasts. I didn't do all of that. I only was a guest on 2, leading up to a book launch, a virtual book launch that I did using Zoom. And my question to you, it was great being a guest, but when I did the book launch, it was a little different. I have a paid Zoom service, and I'm not certain, based off of what you were saying, if I had a panel of people, if the paid service would simply allow me to do like a panel. And then how would that convert over to podcasting? Because I think you have like certain relational platforms. You can do YouTube, you can do Zoom. I guess you can do FaceTime or Facebook or something like that. You could do all 3 of those at the same time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how does that work when it comes to having multiple people on like a panel or guests, as you mentioned? Can you do all of those platforms at once?
So they have a so in this case, say for instance, if I'm on Zoom, so you're recording as you're doing your your panel with your webinar, so to speak. So you're recording, and so what I've seen happen is that recording at the end, when it's complete, and it'll do at least on my computer, does the conversion, and then you have that file. So then I'll take that file and you can edit it, and then you can essentially, I've seen people, I guess most time, upload it up into YouTube or wherever it is that you're wanting it to go, but you have that to be able to use for different platforms. But the only thing that I've seen that I know for sure is you're recording it and you can have it transcribed, like that app where it'll literally put everything in the language of choice where you can see it written out. But I think most of the time they do it and they just take it and, I guess, upload it into those. But I don't know that you cannot do what you want to do as far as essentially have those features activated while you're taking place. Because I've seen Yana, Yana Weiss. And so Yana does that, and him and a lot of others, they'll be literally streaming live on Facebook, but they're recording it'll be Zoom essentially. So I think it's just a clicking of a button on the back end with the settings to alert the Zoom that this is what you want to take place, and voila. And if you have a pay, I'm pretty sure it's available, because if you're paying, that's usually where they offer the good stuff. I don't know if that answered your question. I hope so.
Yeah, it did. Thank you.
Is Adler. Ray, first of all, I would like to thank you for that unbelievable that I really appreciate that you showed on how to set up a podcast, because in
Oh,
my opinion, podcast is a device that empowers ordinary people to
mhm.
use the internet to express their opinion on some issues. Because I used to work for the New York Times years ago, and even before the internet was available. So and I always thought that you cannot compete with this multi-million media companies to have your voice heard.
Mhm.
And so the internet enables ordinary people, it empowers ordinary people, and podcast is a device or a mechanism to enable that. Thank you very much, by the way. So my question is, first of all, what is your central theme in your podcast? What is it about? Real estate?
Oh, yeah, it's international real estate. So
Okay.
I speak with people that are interested and or investing in real estate outside of their home country.
So from what I understand, podcast is essentially an audio file that your followers could listen into, as long as they know where to click and listen to that audio file. So in other words, when you are doing the interview, it doesn't matter if the interview is being done through Zoom or whatever you have, as long as it is recorded. That recorded audio file will be the one that will be, I mean, of course, after some audio editing also, that audio file will then become your podcast source of information. And then that audio file is available in the internet, where people could go, and it depends on how you organize your library. They will then click on that and listen to your podcast. Now, it's possible, although I'm saying audio file, it's possible that the recording could also include video. That's why in many of the podcasts, it's also available on the YouTube, because the YouTube enables you not only audio but also video. Am I right so far?
Yes, uh-huh.
Yeah,
Exactly.
because I listen to a podcast also on some of these. It's about health issues. So anyway, so uh, in my opinion, what is the difference? I mean, if I may ask you, oh, you also mentioned that you may monetize your podcast. Of course, such sooner or later you have to earn some money too. So
Yeah.
because you mentioned some of the equipment, the hardware and the software that you have to buy in order to set up your media podcasting. Now, so my question is, where do you advertise that you have a podcast? I think from what I've heard from what you said is that you have selected your audience, and you go to the area in the internet where they gather, and that it is in that area where you let yourself be known to them that you have a podcast. Am I right so far? How do you advertise, in other words?
So whenever I upload it to Buzzsprout, because that's where I host them, and
Where
so
when?
Buzzsprout, but BU. Let me see. I think I had it up here. Buzzsprout, right here.
BU.
So yeah, you see it on the screen, like in the end there. So Buzzsprout.com is a pretty common and pretty inexpensive place to host your podcast. And so whenever you upload it there, they will then make available to you to use that information, and then
Okay.
you can allow them to spread it to a bunch of other podcast channels like Spotify, Amazon, um, Apple, of course, and Podchaser, Podbean, just a number of them. And they are channels that will be applicable to Apple and Android.
And how much do you pay them, if I
So
may ask?
for it's based on how many hours you will
I
intend
see.
to record. And so for instance, I think if you're wanting a minimum of 3 hours, I think 3 or 6 hours a month, I forget which one it is, it's something like $12 or something like that.
I see.
It might even
Okay,
be
that's
cheaper.
good.
And so but then they have a free version, and they allow you to host them there for free, but they don't give you the extended time period for them to be parked there. So that's what I use right now. But the information regarding the whole going to the water hole, I literally just heard a YouTube video from Kevin talking about that over the past week. So now I'm knowledgeable about, okay, this is the strategy he suggests on how to go and really continue growing my podcast. I need to find out where my listeners are. So I realize a lot of my listeners are military people.
Oh.
And so I just kind of went and looked at the stats, and that's why I realized like the podcast episodes, these were people that were part of the military. And so those episodes were shooting through the roof. So I'm like, okay, there's a good chance after I talked to some of them too, they said, hey, yeah, I sent it out to a lot of my friends and people that I know that are interested in investing, outside of where maybe they're based right now in service.
Okay, so obviously you will be using a website to host your audio files. Now that website can also count how many are your followers, right? Because that would be used for possible advertising.
It can. I was gonna say there's quite a bit that Buzzsprout will allow you to do, because I have the website they give you for you with your subscription as well. So you can go and see, how many people are kind of chiming into your website, or you can use some of the other apps such as Podchart. They have like Podchart, Chartable. There are other metrics that you can use, or companies that provide the metrics to give you information about your podcast as well.
Okay. Again, thank you very much. Thank you for letting us know and sharing your experience on your setting up a podcast. This is very good. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Hi, Darnell.
Hi, Chalmette. Your presentation was great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. My question is, I never, coincidentally, I recently listened to a podcast where they were talking to someone that was from Australia, and he started doing real estate here in the States. So my question is, if someone is interested, or what sources do you know of that would be good if somebody just wanted to read up on international real estate investing to get familiar with it?
My first thought would be podcasts like mine. I'm trying to think of a book. I don't know of a book right off the top. I'm not sure about a book right off the top, but my podcast, and I don't know if you've ever heard of Mikhail Thorpe. How do you say it? Mikhail Thorpe. I wrote it down, and I don't know what I did with the man's name. But he's been running his podcast for a long time. So he has a lot of podcast episodes on there that talk about the different things that people would need to do based on where they're coming from and where they're attempting to invest. But I don't know of a book off the hand. That's a good assignment for me. I'll find out. But I know like podcasts, that's a good start, because podcasts like mine, that's where you'll find a lot of information, because the different episodes that we'll have.
Okay, yeah, I'd be interested in finding out about it, because first thing comes to my mind, if you're in the States and you're investing somewhere else, like how do you handle things like due diligence?
So your person is coming from Australia and they want to invest in the States?
No.
Oh.
I said I was listening to a podcast.
Oh, okay.
The gentleman was from Australia. He lives here now.
Uh-huh.
He's from Australia, and before he moved here to the States, he started investing over here.
Mm-hmm.
And now he lives here in the States. But I was just saying, I was just curious because I don't think he talked about it on a podcast I was listening to. But like I was saying, the first thing came to my mind, like if you're investing internationally, how do you handle things like due diligence? I guess you have to have a relationship with somebody over there to do that.
So what I've been told by, because I have there's one guest of mine. She lives in Australia. She's a native, and she invests in the United States. And for instance, in her case, she is unable to come here much you know, she just can't hop up and just be over here. She can't come here often. So she has done a tremendous job in networking and finding people that she felt confident enough that she could trust them to walk the property in her absence. Funding as far as the capital, she had to kind of, and it's been a little painful because she's had 1 or 2 deals that really went sour, but it's just been a process of, she said, just meeting people and just spending time getting to know them, and then over time you kind of build that trust, and then you all decide to maybe work on a project together. And so that's how she said she did it. She just kind of built that team from afar, because Billy Keels, I don't know if you know Billy Keels, but he's another one. That's what he's done. He lives in Barcelona, Spain. He only invests in the United States. And so he always builds his team the same way. He said he just spends time getting to know people and hopping on Zoom calls. And the few times where he's able to fly over here, when he's over here, he meets with them and just kind of sits down and breaks bread, I guess.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
Okay, so I always jump in and I get to ask some questions at some point too. And then oftentimes that'll spur other people onto some other questions. And I'm just curious, I know of at least one person on the call, and there's not that many on the call tonight. Just if I could ask those on the call, how many of you own property outside of the US? Okay, or are invested in property outside? Yeah, I think Adler and Pedro, you too? Nice. Where, I think Adler, yours are in the Philippines and other places too, or just the Philippines? Yeah. Okay. Where, Pedro, where are yours?
Honduras.
Ah, interesting. Okay, so, you know, and then I'm kind of interested how many on the call maybe have thought about doing a podcast in the past. You've thought about it? There you go. I see Tarina. I see Tyler. I see Adler. Yep. And then I'm kind of curious about C-Ray, how you integrate this. You're a commercial broker in Houston, right? So do you integrate this at all with your business? And at the very least, I feel like there's some sort of tax write-offs. There's some sort of whole portion of your business that this can be expensed out of your business and written off and used some way with that. How do you leverage it that way with your commercial real estate sales, or is it sort of an add-on to that, or is it part of the travel, or how does it all integrate for you in your strategy?
So the initial thought was just an add-on, and as I've given it some time and, you know, just really kind of spent time thinking about how to merge it, but it be smooth and not so, you know, in your face, that's become kind of like, I don't quite know how to do it. So I'm still thinking it through. You know, I'm still thinking it through. At the very least, I've met people and gotten to know people well enough where they're coming from other countries and they're interested if I get onto a deal as a GP and I have, you know, more of a say. They would like to see the deal because they said I would be interested in potentially investing with you. So even without trying anything at all, you know, I've acquired a few people that are interested in placing capital with me, but I don't quite know the answer to that yet. I'm still trying to figure that out as far as like how to, you know, put it all together.
Yeah, got it. I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, thank you for that. And then, you know, I guess as we're thinking down this road, because a lot of our brains circle around this real estate, travel, and a lot of what motivates us investors is this concept of freedom, right? We're all seeking freedom. And, you know, I was reading one of Dan Sullivan's books, and he says freedom for us humans, you know, there's freedom of time, freedom of money, freedom of relationships, freedom of purpose. And one of those, there's a bunch of freedoms, but one of them's freedom of location, right? Potentially your podcast can be done from anywhere in the world, right?
Yep.
And then so I'm kind of curious, have you done your podcast while you're traveling?
Nope, because I started it during the pandemic and I haven't been anywhere other than within the United States. I got a lot of invites though, so I'm ready to go when I do get out.
I hear you. Yeah, I'm excited. So I'd like to, when you do your first one, I want to know, I want to see that. So that's awesome. So then, and then now you're gun ho on Houston, right? And in a few short sentences, what's so great about Houston?
We're approachable. We're truly Southern. We wave at you, and we don't need to know. We might ask you what you eating. It look good, you know, and we'll go order the same thing. There's something for everybody, you know. If you're, you know, want to be posh, or maybe you are posh, whatever. There's something for everybody. If you like to kind of sit at the ice house and, you know, wear a trucker hat, then we got that too. I think that's probably the top things for me. It's approachable, it's affordable, and there's something for everybody. You know what I mean? And we keep it real. We're better than Dallas. Forget Dallas, and no pun intended. It's always a struggle. Everybody thinks Dallas is special. No, it's Houston, man. So yeah. I'm biased. I'm a native, so you know.
I hear you. That's acceptable. That's awesome. Okay, so and then now another Geek Group member of ours, Mary, is in Houston. Have you had a chance to have lunch with her yet? She's in your city.
No, I think I asked you about that probably right before the holidays, and I was life started happening, and I never did get a chance to connect.
I'll put it on my list, and I'll see if I can maybe help with that. So, and then I'm curious about the photos on your presentation.
These are my travels so far. Just a small snippet of them, but yeah, the first one is the Duma in Florence, and this iPhone photo doesn't do it justice when you turn that corner, but you know, the best that iPhone could do. Then this is, I want to go to Budapest, and so I went and got some currency from the bank, and I have it taped up on my mirror in the bathroom. Just kind of remind me. And this was Colmar, France. Spent time there with the Christmas festivals and the small villages. So these are all like just inspirations as to kind of keep you going, and like, you know, why you're doing what you're doing. This is inside of a church in Lisbon. I think it's like the oldest church in Portugal. I'm not sure, but there's some significance to this church. This is the inside of it. This is the Devant, the inside in Bordeaux, where you can buy just wines from. They got some nice stuff in there. And this is the outside of Les Devant in Bordeaux. It's like pretty much a wine museum. That's essentially what it is. This was roaming up through the streets of Paris, not too far from the Champs-Élysées. That's what that is. And then this guy over here, he had the top hat, and he's inside. This cafe is where Hitler and Robert Stalin. That's where they would have breakfast, you know, back in the day. And so this was the guy kind of manning the door. He was inside at the time because it's kind of chilly. This was Austria as well, but this was one of the Christmas festivals. And then this was some strangers we met in St. Bart. So we just hung out with them because she is from, I think, Buffalo, New York, and she speaks beautiful French. So she was kind of like the tour guide because, you know, St. Bart, everybody didn't speak English much. And so she was kind of like, you know, getting you through the door and getting you where you need to go. So yeah, these were just some really cool strangers. We were hanging out at JoJo's in St. Bart. And then I don't think the bottom one, it doesn't show on the screen at large, but this was Lisbon, going through one of the tours, and this older lady, she sells ganja, and it was like almost like a concentrated version of a sangria, and you just give her €1 and she give you a nice shot, and you give her the glass bag and you keep walking. So you just kind of going through the streets of Lisbon. So just some of the pictures that keep me inspired.
Wow.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. Go ahead.
You know, Chalmette, I find it fascinating that you've done so much traveling and to know that your podcast has a unique spin to it, that you're focusing on international real estate. I think that's awesome, because there are a lot of podcasters out there, but I think yours makes it so unique. And then to know that you have personal experience in traveling yourself makes you a very unique person too. So I can see why people would be willing to get to know you. And when you do have some investment opportunities, they would certainly want to pair up with you. So I find you to be fascinating. In the conversation that you and I had the other night, I was like, wow. So thank you for sharing all of this. And I don't know, do you find your guests by using certain platforms? There's a guy named Andrew Pullman or something like that. He puts out a regular advertisement for shopping around for guests. How do you basically find your guests?
I spend a considerable amount of time on LinkedIn, and I also have found that reading like these different articles, people actually respond. Like if you send them an email, they'll actually respond back. I initially kind of thought that wouldn't be so easy, but it's starting to become more and more easy. And then word of mouth, like I'm a part of some these different groups on Slack. Mm-hmm. Like I don't know how they find you, but some kind of way they find you, and they'll reach out to me. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll join. Y'all seem cool. And then when you talk to them and you tell them what your podcast is about, and they're like, oh yeah, I know this person. Okay, I'm gonna connect you. And then they'll, connect me. And so that kind of helps. And so I don't know, just over time, you just kind of just meet people, and then it just kind of grows organically. Cause yeah, I don't know that I would have known this many people. And then in Europe and other countries, I noticed podcast is not as much of a thing as it is here. Because I've talked to people, like I was talking to a guy in Budapest. He was a good fit, but he was a little afraid. He was like, I don't know about that, Chalmette. And so he's like, I'll get back to you. He never did. So I just think, sometimes it's scary because people have been on there, so they're not sure that they'll be a good fit. Because I think sometimes people think it's going to be really, kind of stiff and stuffy. And I'm like, no, we're just going to talk. We're just going to talk, man. And so I don't know. I usually go a bunch of different channels, whether it be LinkedIn, Clubhouse, these different Slack channels with people, these different groups. And I don't know, just kind of organically, I find people if I don't reach out to them, because I want to have someone come on and talk about the timber opportunities to invest in timber in Panama, I think Nicaragua, and some other places. And so, yeah, just it happens. Oh, yeah.
Siri, I have a question. One is, so based from your travel so far, which are the hot areas outside of the U.S. in terms of real estate multifamily? Are there any tips that you could provide us?
One that I wish I knew somebody that would be interested, because I would be interested. Croatia.
Croatia?
Uh-huh.
Why?
Because they don't have a lot of hotels. So a lot of times the multifamily will be used for hotels, as well as there may be some permanent residents there.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my next question would be, as you have, I think from what I understand from your previous conversation with one of the attendees, is that when you identify a potential guest in your upcoming podcast, sometimes they have concern, like they're not comfortable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you sometimes give them a predetermined set of questions that you intend to ask them, so that it will help them at least get at ease, and because they may not like to be put on the spot, for some questions that they feel that it's so sensitive or whatever?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I do that for everybody, but especially somebody that I know has some reservations. I'm going to send them those questions and make sure I don't veer off from that, because I don't want them to be uncomfortable, because it'll come out in their voice, and it'll, it just makes people uncomfortable, and I don't want them to be uncomfortable. So I definitely make sure I do that, so they can, if they want to, they can just kind of read it off their answers as we're there, so that way their comfort is at the highest level.
So when do you intend to make money out of your podcasting? What's your timeline? In the next 3 years, 2 years?
No, I plan on, I that's part of what I'm really enjoying about Stillness is the key. Is just I've been kind of slowing down to just really kind of think through some things and why I want to do it, and what will it, benefit as far as anyone outside of myself if I do that. And so I've given myself the timeline, and I'm kind of putting myself on the spot, because now I'm telling you this and somebody's going to hold me to it. But I've given myself, by the end of first quarter,
Okay.
I want to have a strategy in mind as far as like how am I going to make all this line up and just come together.
Yeah. Last question. So far, how much have you invested in your podcast venture? More or less, just
So
just
for
to
the
give us
cap,
yeah.
so for the
How much money have
capex,
you
really.
invested
So for the capex, really,
overall?
Mike was like 100, and then my headphones were like $20, and then I don't really count this monitor because I already had it for other reasons, but I did get a camera, and so the camera was like 30. It was like, let's say $50. So I would say no more than about $200 or something.
Oh, wow.
And so every month, as far as your OpEx, well, Canva, that's like $12, I think, because I need to have the access to remove the background of someone's picture. So
Yeah.
that's really kind of important for me to have that feature. So that's $12. And then the Buzzsprout, I think it's like 10 or something like that, my subscription that I chose. And then I think that's almost it. Because my artwork, that's not a continued thing. I don't have a Zoom subscription because I only have usually one guest. So I don't have a Zoom subscription. So that's still under $50 as well.
And how many podcasts have you done, more or less?
I am at, last time I look, I think I'm at like 25.
25?
Yeah.
And if I were to go to your website is in
Buzzsprout.
Buzzsprout.
Uh-huh.
So I'll just go there and log in and look for your name, and then it will,
Adler, click on the link in the chat. Can you see the chat?
And
Click
it'll
on-
take you straight.
Yeah, it'll take you right there, and the 25 or so are right there on the homepage.
okay, I'll do that. Thank you guys.
Yeah, and if you don't get it, let me know. I'll text it to you so you can
Okay.
open it easier. Okay.
Thank you.
Nice. Thank you for all those questions. We're eating up the time pretty good here, C. Ray. I don't know if you noticed, but I was curious. Sorry to butt in on some questions here, but what are the models of monetization that you're considering briefly? What are kind of the options to monetize a podcast that might be considered?
So for me, it would be, I believe, based on kind of what I've researched so far, companies that would benefit from my audience. So that would be travel. I'm not going to say agencies, but they call themselves consultants. So those that help with, a lot of times, helping expats relocate to a place outside of their home country. Also hotels, that are available in the various countries and, just throughout the world. I don't know. I've even thought about any type of accessories, whether it be, you start talking about luggage, or I don't know, the little headrest. I mean, not the headrest, but the neck rest whenever you're like, on the plane. And so those are like, kind of my initial thoughts about companies that I would essentially kind of look to see if I could get a conversation with them and provide the links and kind of give a I don't know, a brief synopsis of who that company is and the sponsor for the day or whatever verbiage you put around it. And also different, they have one or two companies I think that do well with publicizing kind of at large your YouTube channel. So I think some of these outlets that are utilizing the audience to be able to help promote their businesses and whatnot. Those are my initial thoughts about how I think the overall picture could look.
And also, you may want to consider subscription, membership subscription, right?
Well, I don't know, because then I don't want
Well, it
people to
depends.
feel like I don't know, I don't know. That one's a difficult one because I don't want people to feel like I don't want to pay for that and then they don't listen. So, I mean, that might be one I'll look at some point, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. All
Okay.
right.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
So then, okay, couple other things. Will you make sure that you log into Anthrobank and update all that contact information for you? Yeah, I'm going to keep harping about that just so everybody can find you. And there's a place for a website link in there so Adler can click on it and go straight to it. And then one last thing, I'm glad you've talked to Tarina because her background is in the military. And I'm very curious about that whole expat and relocation and sponsorship, just that whole connection. I know you mentioned it briefly. If you were to just talk a little bit more about that, what would you say?
So my thought, because I know Tarina mentioned, I think it was APOD. I think I got it right? APOD. And
80PI.
Oh, okay. So I had it wrong. No wonder that I was trying to read that link earlier. I was like, this doesn't sound like what Tarina said. So anyway, sorry. Okay, I got it wrong. So I want to speak to them because, for instance, I spoke to a gentleman the other day. He's in Panama and he's from the United States, but he just closed on some property in Panama, but he also bought some property in Germany. And he said that he found a lot of great benefits with it because they have a nice amount of money that they get when they're based out of, in that case, he said Germany. And he said they don't have, well, not say they, but he said a lot of people are trying to find ways to really put that money to work. And so in addition to looking at kind of where my audience was coming from and then talking to people, I thought about what he just said. Like they're wanting to think of ways to grow their investments for their family, their legacy, and what have you. So I'm like, well, wow, what better way to kind of tie that into me providing information so that people will know lenders, attorneys, notaries, whoever you need to be able to assist you with building that team so that you can execute on those goals that you have in mind and looking at how to better prepare for, the legacy of your family and stuff like that. Those are my thoughts so far, Max.
Yeah,
I love it.
That's that's a very good question because if sometimes I look at some of the multifamily properties in Texas, and in Texas there are so many U.S. military bases. So in terms of investing in multifamily properties in those areas, obviously, sometimes you cannot avoid the fact that some of the tenants will be military staff members.
Mm-hmm.
So are there any benefits of being in the military that will help the tenants pay for the rent or something like that? Or being a member of the military, if I need to make a loan, is it easier for me being a member of the military to ask for a loan or not or whatever?
There is, and I don't remember the name of the program, but there's an episode that I did with a sailor, and he is currently based out of Hawaii, but he was I think he was in South Korea earlier this year or last year, I'm sorry. And he gave the name of that particular benefit that was available to them with regard to buying real estate. And so I would have to go and listen to that last part to retrieve what he called it. But he called the name on the podcast episode of what that benefit was that military can use toward real estate. And it was kind of a sweet thing because he was like, it's, you know, it's special for them. It's not something that everybody would have access to, but it was something that is available, and a lot of people aren't necessarily utilizing it, but it's available to them if they want to use it.
Interesting. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I did want to mention one thing that to be, and I don't do it as much as I should, but it really does also help you build kind of that organic following when you go on podcasts as a guest. For those that aren't shy, it's a great opportunity because I mean they allow you to come and share, and you can, you know, promote your podcast, and then that'll kind of allow you to kind of dip into other audiences that, you know, may not have otherwise have found you so easily.
Yeah, as
So-
as I had mentioned, podcast is a technology enabler for ordinary people in a democratic society. Yeah, I say that because I remember years ago in my office, and one of my coworkers made a comment. Oh, the internet is full of garbage, and I told him, yeah, but what's the alternative? A world without the internet or a world with the internet? I've seen both worlds, I said, and believe me, I would rather go for a world with the internet. It's not perfect, but at least it empowers ordinary people. And podcast is one technology that does that. Thank you very much, by the way.
Okay, so I hate to interrupt, and I thank all so much. Thank you, C. Ray. We've got about 3 minutes left. Everybody unmute, go back to our document, and let's scroll down and rate and wrap. Remember, you're not rating the speaker, you are rating the meeting.
For me, it's a 10, okay?
All right, Adler's a 10. Nice.
Tarina, 9.
Nice, thank you.
Pedro, 8.
Thanks, Pedro.
Mark, 9.
Thanks, Mark.
Darnell, 10.
Nice, thank you so much. Thank you. Cabrin? It's okay if you can't. Cabrin's a 9. This is Max. I'm a 9.5. Who did we miss? You can just say your name and call it out if we missed you. All right, well, that's awesome. Well, we're 2 minutes out, and I totally appreciate that, C. Ray. That's very awesome. What we try to do is get half of the speakers from outside of the group, right? Outside experts, so to speak, and half the speakers from inside the group, inside experts. And we're looking for, if you haven't spoken yet to the group, we're looking for you to come up with your topic and plan that out. We'll put you on the schedule, and then we'll roll through with it. It's amazing how sometimes I talk to you guys and you're like, I don't know if anybody's going to be interested in this. And then I feel like you go ahead and talk, and it's very interesting. So I just want to encourage you, if you have an area of expertise, be thinking about it and get ready and present it to the group. So, all right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Max. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a
good
great
evening,
week,
everyone.
everybody.
All
Have a
right.
great
Thank
week.
you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, bye.
Bye,
Bye,
everybody.
guys.